Good morning, Munchkins. Let's begin with the obligatory word from your sponsor. That'd be me. If you like what you hear, please hit the share button, get this out to your friends. If you love what you hear, hit the subscribe button. It helps me to make a lot more of these things. All right, let's rumble. So, military strategist Sun Tzu lived in about 500 BC, and he wrote this book entitled The Art of War. This book so effectively sets forth military strategy that it is the number one or two book read by military officers all around the world. Not bad for a book written over 2,000 years ago. Consider the following couple of passages. Number one, all warfare is based on deception. Hence, when we are able to attack, we must seem unable. When using our forces, we must appear to be inactive. Number two, when we are near, we must make the enemy believe we are far away. When far away, we must make him believe that we are near. Then consider the Russian equivalent to Sun Tzu in the 20th century. The term the Russians used for this massive deception is maskirovka. Here's the definition of maskirovka. Russian military deception, sometimes known as maskirovka, is a military doctrine developed from the start of the 20th century. The doctrine covers a broad range of measures for military deception, from camouflage to denial and deception. And I included the video in this article that you all really have got to watch. So your mom and I had a Russian professor who was exiled from the old Soviet Union. He was the first person that I heard talk about maskirovka and how the communists used maskirovka to destroy the West. So Dad, what does this have to do with current events? Well, in fact, everything. Consider this. At the tactical level, organizations like Antifa and Black Lives Matter profess to be in favor of helping the common man or in favor of helping black Americans. But when you evaluate the tactics that they employ, there is no logical connection between the actions they take and the objectives that they profess. They're taking a page right out of Sun Tzu's The Art of War and Soviet maskirovka. No logical person would conclude that defunding the police, defacing and destroying property in black communities, burning down vital businesses that employ these people, and destroying iconic statues will result in an improvement in the lives of poor people or blacks. It's simply not logical. Therefore, a rational person would have to conclude that the stated objective is not the true objective. Therein lies the maskirovka. To find the nature of the true objective, you have to look at the results of the actions that they are employing. The results of those actions will lead you to the true objective. Here are the tactics employed by the left over the last 4 years. Fomenting riots in major cities, calling for reductions in police in areas that clearly need an increase in police presence, state and municipal leaders allowing mobs to destroy icons vital to the nation's core beliefs, a constant stream of unsubstantiated accusations against the current president, including impeachment with virtually no evidence, unwillingness to enforce basic rule of law, consistent lying about the nature of the COVID virus, deliberately taking actions to shut down the economy without justification, a constant attack on the moral legitimacy of the nation's foundings, consistent messaging designed to divide the country into competing interest groups, gays versus straights, religious versus non-religious, blacks versus whites, etc. Supported divisive actions at every opportunity. No Pledge of Allegiance in classrooms, no national anthem at games, group national anthems like the Black National Anthem, that sort of thing. Support of open borders for the express purpose of placing greater pressure on the underclass and straining the nation's ability to acculturate the newly immigrated, furthering a sense of competing groups and more divisiveness. These actions are designed to lead towards an economic recession or depression, a sense of division, and a sense of panic among the general population. At bottom, to denigrate the nation's moral legitimacy. The objective is to cause the population to crowd for increased government intervention as the only answer to these seemingly recalcitrant problems. In fact, to soften the country to accept a transformation to a new form of government. Of course, the end game is to get the population to ask for enslavement as the answer. They don't call it slavery because no one would willingly accept slavery. Instead, they call it socialism, which eventually leads to communism, which in fact is slavery. How is a slave different from a communist? A Southern slave in the 18th century was effectively taxed at 100%. An American communist will be taxed at 100% also. Actually, an 18th century American slave will be better off than a 21st century American slave. We know from the American slave experience that masters rarely killed their slaves because a slave had economic value. We know from the Russian experience that a Russian slave had zero value because no one had ownership. Therefore, it was easy for that government to kill 50 to 100 million citizens over an 80-year period. Now, the average Joe Lefty in your peer group is not operating at the strategic level. They are operating at the tactical level. They are running on emotion. These are the people you see holding Black Lives Matter signs on corners. When you engage with them, you have to confront them non-emotionally. Basic questions will suffice, like how does destroying public property and businesses in black communities help black people? Or how does destroying statues of George Washington help the black community? Or how does taking a knee during the national anthem help black people? It's simply not logical. Most will be too proud to admit this to your face. But your job is not to win an argument. Your job is to make them stop and think. It's also to help them understand that it's okay to disagree with the popular line. Many of them have an uncomfortable, gnawing feeling deep down inside that something isn't right with this stuff. The old-fashioned term for that was a conscience. C.S. Lewis called it the voice of God. Your job is to get them to stop and listen to that voice, not to win an argument. Finally, don't buy the Maskirovka. Don't believe me either. Use your own brain, think about what you're seeing, and determine if it passes the logic test. The logic test is, does that make sense? The question you always have to ask yourself, does that make sense? Peace out, everybody. Ciao.